Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Underhood Show. My name's Josh Prophet. I'm the service director here at Mel Hambelton Ford, and alongside me this morning is Kelly Hamilton. Kelly, good morning.
Good morning.
Kelly runs a quick lane down there, so we got a good show here for you this morning, but hey, it is a call-in show, 316-462-3673. That's the number to jump on the air here with us and talk about anything automotive related. So you got something going on with your vehicle and want to know what it might be, or get some direction or just some advice, or you want to talk about the color of the sky. It don't matter. Let's get the phones ringing. 316-462-3673. Again, that's the number to jump on the air here with us. And then we send a package out to every caller that calls in, but it consists of the works, which is an oil change and tire rotation. We use Motorcraft oil and filter products here at Mel Hambelton Ford. While we're completing that, we're going to also perform a multi-point inspection on your vehicle, checking over the brakes, tires, steering, suspension, all the safety-related components on that vehicle, just making sure that it's ready to go for that next 5,000 miles of driving. You'll also receive yourself $10 to Mel's Diner and get yourself something to eat and drink while you're here with us at the big corner. Complete nitrogen for your tires, so you get all the great benefits that nitrogen has to offer. And then a BG products package, which consists of a can of MOA or motor oil additive for your engine oil, and then 44K for your fuel system. Again, just getting that vehicle geared up and ready to go for that next 5,000 miles of driving. So let's get the phones ringing. 316-462-3673. So, Kelly, last week, Phil and I were talking about basically, fuel prices and kind of where they were heading, and in this industry, and I think back years past of just trends that you see as far as customers' emphasis or focus maybe on fuel economy, obviously based on when fuel gets up to $3, $4, $5 a gallon, then it becomes more of a thing. And I think, years ago, obviously cars weren't as fuel efficient as they are today. But how the fuel efficiency and then just maintenance, last week we talked about, common to do tune-ups, and years ago you'd put in points and condensers and spark plugs and stuff like that. I mean, I think a consumer still is aware of spark plug replacement maybe, but outside of that, you're not putting on points and condensers and things like that, and we're really more treating or taking care of or trying to increase fuel performance with services such as the BG services to help increase that or maintain that vehicle. And so that's one of the things that I had on my list to talk about today. So got a couple of slides. We did some advisor training this last week, kind of with BG as well. It was really just re-emphasizing the importance of maintenance in general of whatever that is, and how important that it is to make sure that our staff is aware of, being in the grind and doing this day to day. You just maybe take some things for granted that a common customer coming in just isn't really aware of or even know that they need. And so that's, it was, BG had some stats out there just as far as, miles driven and age of vehicle and importance of vehicle. I mean, even down to loan values, the average loan value out there, and how much longer people are keeping cars today than what they were years ago. And so between the maintenance side of things and where fuel prices are headed and stuff like that, a couple of things that I wanted to go over today was the different really more so maintenance specifically, but specifically on services that would help a consumer with fuel economy on their vehicle. And so one of the things that one of the slides that I got up here now is in regards to the different types of fuel systems that are out there. I don't think the common consumer understands how many different ways the manufacturers over the years have, one, introduced fuel to the vehicle, and then two, just the difference the difference in those systems, and I thought we could talk about that a little bit today.
Yeah, and how they interact with other subsystems in there as well.
Yeah,
in the way that fuel's delivered into that cylinder.
We've got a caller that I'm going to get patched through, and so we'll get him on the phone, and then we'll come back to the different type of fuel systems in a vehicle. So let's go to the phones. Let's talk to Grant. Grant, you're on live with Under the Hood. Good morning.
Good morning, guys. How you doing?
We're doing great. How about yourself?
Not too shabby. I wanted to talk to you guys about a Ford Transit that I got.
Okay.
So I've noticed recently that I've been getting 19.4 miles to the gallon, which is 2.4 miles to the gallon higher than what I've ever gotten before. However, it has come to the sacrifice of no AC working.
So you're just operating it in general without the AC, and you're noticing that much of a difference in fuel economy with it?
Yes.
Does that?
So, but the changes, like the AC will not work on 1 through 3. However, if you put it on max, all it does is blow like mediocre air, which I think is weird, but we've been getting crazy good gas mileage after this.
Yeah, so I'm going to say that your probably compressor is not running at all, and that's probably the explanation for the difference in fuel economy.
That compressor does take several horsepower on its own to run. So anytime you're running that AC compressor, it's using the efficiency of that engine to be able to run that compressor.
But you and you're going to almost 19 miles to a gallon, and you were previously at 17?
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's from the manufacturer standpoint, or just there's several things that obviously can affect fuel economy. And, one of the things that they say right off the bat is AC is going to be a huge thing, just because, like Kelly said, the load of that compressor, that it's robbing horsepower away from that engine to be able to do its job, to get the vehicle, pushed down the road. But that is a huge draw on fuel performance. I mean, the other side of things is it's kind of a catch-22, because, if you were really splitting hairs on fuel economy or efficiency, is that, okay, you go without AC, but then you roll the windows down and you lose your efficiency in wind resistance, because the air is not flowing over the vehicle. Now, which one of those two is going to take more fuel economy? It's definitely going to be the AC, I'm sure. But also, when it's 100 degrees outside, I'm going to give you a couple gallons of miles to the gallon to be able to get cool air for sure. So,
yep, exactly. It sounds like you got an AC issue going on there in a couple different ways. Sounds like that blower. Well, yeah. Sounds like that AC compressor probably isn't running, and it sounds like you have a problem there with the blower motor or blower motor resistor or something like that we need to look at.
How long's the blower motor not been working on those speeds?
I don't know. Maybe I think 2-3 months.
Yeah.
Josh, another thing, a lot of folks may not realize that AC compressor also runs in the wintertime. And it'll run on a few different heater functions off and on. And that way it just keeps the oil circulating in that AC system and everything like that. So even when you think it's not running, a lot of times it is.
Yeah. So in the winter, especially if it's on defrost, to get the humidity out of the air, that AC compressor, like Kelly said, will be running as well. And so, but happy to throw a diagnostic onto your package. We can take a look at that AC for you, see what's going on. I do believe that we're probably going to have a couple of different issues, because even with it on max, like the AC should still be functioning and working just fine. And I think you probably maybe have a different issue with the blower motor resistor, and which basically it's a component that controls or enables you to get the different speeds that from for your fan settings. And so we'll throw that diagnostic on
Right.
your package and take a look at that for you. So
I was going to say, because for the rear it works perfectly fine, but for the front it doesn't work unless you got it on max.
That was going to be one of the questions that I had for you when we were talking about the difference in fuel economy, is if your system had a front and rear AC unit in it. Sounds like it does. Is the AC working okay in the rear?
The AC works fine in the rear.
Okay.
And it's chilling. And we've been running on that one on max just so then we can stay cool.
Yeah, to get the air up to the front.
Okay, so the rear AC is blowing ice cold.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's back up here.
Yeah.
I think your compressor is probably okay. You might have an issue there with like a blend door that changes the temperature of what is coming out of the vents. You might have a blend door not working coupled with that blower motor issue.
Yeah, I don't know. That's why I was calling in. I'm like, man, this is weird. I've never seen this on any vehicle that I've ever had.
Yeah, but then that would be interesting on
how
the
you fuel
economy.
Miles so one of the things that that we kind of started down last week talking about and never really finished the conversation. And I don't know, where you typically fill up or anything like that, but just the difference in fuels. I mean, the other day I went to one of these. I don't know. I think it was a jump start or something, but there was literally, I think 8 different fuel nozzles there. And like, as a consumer, I'm like, how the heck do you know what like, I'm in the automotive industry, right, and it's so easy to just walk up there and grab a nozzle and think you got, the right one. And so that was one of the things last week that, like I said, we kind of started talking about, and then, believe it or not, got sidetracked, but just the introduction of ethanol into fuel and kind of what that can do for fuel economy and things like that. And so I guess the question I would have for you is this something that you've typically always got around 17 miles to a gallon, but then now all of a sudden it just pops up, or you're typically around 19, had been getting 17, and, kind of walk us through that.
So since driving, and I typically get 17, unless like it's really windy or something, and I'll get lower. But since this issue has happened, it has been 19 to 19.4. And like I've been taking pictures every time that I get over 19. I'm like, wow, this is crazy. I can't believe this vehicle's actually getting it.
How many miles are on it?
We took a trip down to Alabama, and it got 17 to 16.4. And how many miles? I don't know. I'll go and check for you real quick.
Oh yeah. I mean, are we talking, what year is it?
It's a 2019. I believe there's like 154,000 miles on it.
Yeah. Yeah. That was going to be my next question, is just kind of mileage wise where it's at. I mean, honestly, a couple of things in my mind, there could legitimately be something going on with like a fuel sender unit or something along those lines that are, that are giving you a false reading of what it is. The other thing that was coming to my mind too is, and this vehicle is not new enough, but if it had went through some type of over-the-air update and something changed, within the calculations or the programming of the computer or something along those lines, would be the other thing. So,
have you had any service or maintenance done on it recently, right around that time? Maybe new tires put on or anything like that?
Any service or maintenance? You got the lights changed or no?
I mean, I get a service there every time it needs to go in.
Sure.
Yeah.
Nothing major.
Yeah. What one of the things that where Kelly was going with this, and consumers just don't even I don't even think understand this or realize this, but something as simple as just changing the tires on a vehicle. I remember specifically dealing with a oh my goodness, Prius. When they very first came out, and the fuel economy, and that's what was
that's
what sold that car, was the fuel economy and what they got. And I remember a consumer that they were monitored fuel economy extremely close, and that was the big reason for them even having it. In fact, it was a secondary vehicle, drove a lot of miles, and the main reason that they had that vehicle was just for the fuel economy portion of it. And we they selected some tires. The tires that were on it were I don't even remember the brand of them, but in order to replace it with the tires that came on it, I mean, the price of the tires were almost double of about what anything else that was out there. And so the consumer decided, hey, it's not worth that specific tire. I'm going to go, put something a little more budget friendly on it. They put those tires on there, and I mean, it changed. I want to say it was like 10 miles to the gallon. That it made a difference in that fuel economy on that vehicle. And then obviously after we put them on and they noticed the change, and we got to talking about it and doing a little more research on the difference in tires, and the weight of that other tire was almost double of what was on there. And so now that's an extreme case scenario, I think, in a replacement tire, but it's an example like that there's a lot that goes into specifically when you're talking about fuel economy, that these manufacturers put into the methodical process each and every time to make sure that we're getting you the best fuel economy
tire
for sure.
Type with the compound and everything like that. And then the other important one is tire pressure.
Yeah, is air pressures for sure. So, but hey, we're gonna get that. Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I know the Transit right now, it has some really meaty tires, and we're actually running low on air kind of, and it's still surprising me that it gets that good of gas mileage.
Yeah.
So
yeah, we're going to add a diagnostic onto your package, take a look at that air conditioning, see what's going on there. We can run some checks in regards to what the reasoning behind the fuel gain is, just to make sure that everything's at least calibrated and up to date on modules and things like that on it as well. But we'll get that diagnostic added onto your package and take a look at that Transit for you. So.
All right. Awesome. Thank you guys very much. I hope you guys have a good rest of your day.
You too. Thanks for the call. All right. 316-462-3673. That's a number to jump on the air here with us and talk about anything automotive, kind of topic of the day. We're headed down the different types of fuel systems that are out there. And this is just, I would say, a very, very short glimpse into a couple of different explanations of fuel systems. So I'll get this post put up here, and then Kelly, you can kind of walk us through what we got going on here on these different systems.
So your port injections, that's multi-port fuel injection. It's been around for decades now. I mean, that is where you have a fuel injector in each intake runner on your intake manifold. So it is spraying that fuel in.
So yeah, this is the mouse over here.
He's putting the arrow over the fuel injector now. So it's spraying that fuel into that intake runner, and it sprays a very fine mist. They're looking for what's called atomization. So that's when the air and fuel blend perfectly. But notice how it's spraying right behind the intake valve. Okay. So as your crankcase fumes, those of you who know, it's called PCV valve, the positive crankcase ventilation. So it's venting crankcase fumes, and it's putting it back into the intake so it gets reburned. It's part of your emissions. So as those fumes and that air and now getting mixed with that fuel, it's all passing past that intake valve going into the cylinder.
Yeah, right here.
Okay, before it gets burned. So where that's important is if you look over at the center image.
Oh, okay. I'll put that back up there, but go ahead.
If you look over at the center image, that is direct injection, which a lot of manufacturers went to for several years. Some of them are still running a sole direct injection setup, and it injects the fuel right into the cylinder, almost like a diesel engine. But it's injecting that fuel right into the cylinder at a very high pressure during the compression stroke. So if you look at that, the difference there is on that center image, you're no longer spraying the fuel in behind the intake valve. It's coming right into the cylinder. But in that intake runner, you do still have that positive crankcase ventilation coming in there. So that air with the oil mixture in the air. And that intake valve, you might guess, it's hot.
Yeah.
It's very hot. So, as you can imagine, when that oil and air mixture goes across the backside of that hot intake valve, all that oil that hits the intake valve, it sticks right there and turns into what?
Carbon.
Yeah.
So let's talk just a little bit while I've got these two images up here, and then I'll go to some pictures here. But so just in these two different systems, the port injection and the direct injection, like you've got to service those different.
Yes.
Right. Like there's different ways to. There's some similarities in the carbon and where it's going to form, but then in other areas, like it's different for each one of them. So one of the main differences, let's talk about just fuel pressure in general and what it takes to run the port injection system and get that fuel in there, and then the fuel pressure and what it takes to run that in the direct injection system. I mean, you're talking
on the port injection, you're talking 50 to 70 psi,
mm-hmm.
But that direct injection, 2,500 psi, 3,000 psi.
Well, and so in doing that, so for one, you have to overcome the compression within this combustion cylinder here, because that's where let's say the bang happens, right?
Yes.
But then, so difference in fuel pressure. But now let's talk about the difference in the injector spray timing.
Yes.
What it's going to look like as far as a mist, and things like that. So now, I'll flip over to a different image here, but this is where we're currently most commonly at.
Yes.
Is this dual injection system. And there's benefits for the direct injection, and then there's benefits for the port fuel injection
Yes.
system. And so the manufacturer just came out and says, hey, why don't we have both? And I don't think a lot of people even understand or realize the fact that whatever classification or size of engine you have, that there's typically two injectors
Yep.
per cylinder on each one of those
Yes.
units.
So direct injection is great for efficiency.
Mhm.
It is the best for efficiency because it can be so precisely controlled, and it can make that engine really efficient on fuel. But what they found out is in doing that, you do give up some horsepower, some torque, things like that. So now they've gone to this dual injection, which is run on most everything, and basically you get the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
It runs primarily on direct injection when you are cruising or just running down the road. But when you put your foot into it, or when you're towing and that the load on the engine gets to a certain point, it'll kick on that multi-port fuel injection in conjunction with the direct injection.
So that brings me to to our next screen here, and this is kind of what you were referring to earlier. And I went ahead and just threw all three of them up here. So this first image is going to be the injector deposits, and so the very first thing. So this is going to be a direct injected injector, but the very first thing I would point out is this is magnified extremely.
So the direct
large.
injection injectors are maybe the tip of them is about
pinhead.
a quarter of an inch across total, or a little smaller, maybe 3/16 of an inch across.
And so in that aspect, if this whole diameter here is
a quarter inch,
then now you can see how fine these are. But you can see, and this one, I mean, has some on it. I've seen obviously a lot worse, but just the different deposits and things like that on this tip of this injector. Now you have fuel coming out of here at very, very high volume and in a fine mist. You can clearly see that this stuff is going to affect how that sprays and how it's dispersed into the engine, and what that would do then to, as it ignites, it's going to produce, it's not going to fully ignite very well.
Exactly. And like I said earlier with atomization, that's what you want in that rich air fuel mixture in that cylinder. You want as near perfect atomization as possible so you get a full complete burn across that entire combustion chamber.
Yeah.
When anytime it's disrupted like it is in that image, you're not going to get that complete atomization in that cylinder, which is going to rob you of horsepower, torque, and
fuel economy.
And fuel economy, efficiency.
Yep, very, very much so. And then, so this is kind of what you were talking about earlier about the port fuel injection. And so typically your injector is spraying up here. Now, again, like you said, in both cases, because it is a PCV system on this vehicle, you can see the carbon deposits that are just attracted to themselves as they flew through this extremely hot intake valve. But again, now think of airflow, think of fuel, flowing across this, and how obviously it's going to be disrupted in its flow because it's not smooth surfaces, and creates turbulence and just doesn't allow that to get where it needs to go. And I would say really all three of these images, from my perspective, I've seen way worse.
Very much so.
And I've seen,
at mileages that would surprise most folks.
Yeah, correct. I don't know the exact mileage on these components here, but and again, so much of that depends, and that's why I go back to talk about that multi-point inspection and the value of that thing is because from a all of this stuff is going to vary based on driving conditions, where you're getting your fuel, the cleanliness of the fuel, operating temperatures, when how long you drive the vehicle every time you start it. Do you shut it off a lot? Like this image here on somebody that makes shorter run trips, there's a lot of unburned fuel that then now evaporates into the intake system that later turns into carbon and causes issues, as opposed to somebody that starts their vehicle and drives it 2 hours a time and gets it up to operating temperature and doesn't short cycle the engine a bunch of times, And then the third image here is the piston rings, and this is where you get into the GDI service and the importance of that GDI service that we talk about and offer as well. And again, when you're talking about fuel economy, or a service that would help perform fuel miles per gallon or fuel efficiency, I don't think a lot of consumers think about piston rings as something that aids in that, right?
So yeah, and a couple things to that. By 2006, just about every manufacturer had switched over to what's called low tension piston rings. Low tension piston rings are great for rotating resistance. It allows that engine to rotate easier, increases economy, right?
Yep.
But the problem with low tension piston rings is they have a tendency to be susceptible to carbon buildup, and they will stick inside that piston just like they were in that image there. Well, when that happens, you get what's called blow-by. So you're putting more pressure into the crankcase. You're getting more of that crankcase fumes and ventilation back into that intake runner, and you're compounding.
It's taking a problem and making it worse.
It's compounding the problem on the intake and the intake valve and everything like that in your airflow. So, yeah, all those systems are very much related.
Would definitely agree with that. And I don't know, one of the things that we talked about as part of some of this advisor training is like the most single service that you could most important single service that you could do to your vehicle. And I just don't know. I mean, everybody knows that they need to change their oil, right? But outside of that, like, what is that? And for me, it's a multi-point inspection what I would say to somebody. But the multi-point inspection is not the service that's going to help you. It's just going to help you identify what is the best thing that you can do for your vehicle based on your driving condition, habits, how you're using the vehicle, what because I for a fact my wife's vehicle and my vehicle are operated two completely different ways, and what she would need and what I would need is completely different, and it could have the exact same miles on it, could be the exact same vehicle, and it's going to be different. And that's where, when you talk about blanketed over owner's manuals or needed service intervals just based on time and miles, like, yeah, there's a guide you can go by, but how accurate is it? And when you put all of those things into the equation, it's not, it's not that accurate for sure. And so it's just that's where I put the value on that multi-point inspection. So important for sure. Well, hey, 316-462-3673. That's a number to jump on the air here with us. And you got a million things. Yeah.
No, we're good.
Not at all.
I'm just not doing anything.
Understand that completely. So the other thing that I had, we'll kind of shift gears here just a little bit and talk about diesels. The images and the fuel systems and the stuff that we talked about a little bit ago are predominantly for gas stuff, but diesels are extremely similar.
Yep.
In that aspect. The direct injection applies with diesels. In fact, that's really where that came from.
Yep.
was the diesel side of things. And with diesels, they've got a whole nother component that's related to efficiencies and what can affect fuel economy even further down than now. We've discussed the direct injection and piston rings and where you can lose efficiencies there from that side of things. But the next portion on the diesel side of it is the diesel particulate filters. And so I want to go into that. And so I want to say 2008 probably is when they started coming out with
2008, 2010, somewhere right around there. Yeah.
With the early stages of diesel emissions and making that being a very needed thing. And then again, the restrictions on those manufacturers have just gotten tighter and tighter and tighter since then. And so
then 2011 was the first year for DEF.
Yeah. Yep, for sure. And so we're going to get in and talk about the DEF portion of this. I got a couple of images here we'll pull up. But essentially,
after old diesel exhaust fluid, 20 years ago, if you said that to somebody, you were jacking with them.
Well, I mean, like blinker fluid you need
exhaust fluid.
You need to put what in your wear? And so again, this is just a generalized thing of what's happening in a diesel exhaust system today. But the first portion of it, you have the diesel oxidation catalyst and basically the DOC. And so that's, for all intents purposes, is just a catalytic converter, but for diesels, right? Yeah. Then it goes into the diesel particulate filter. And again, that's where it's going to filter out the diesel particulate portion. I mean, the name pretty well.
That's where it holds all your coal that you would be rolling if you didn't have it.
And so what it does, these vehicles, they'll pack all this unburned particulate matter in this filter, and then the vehicle will go through like a regenerative stage. And so essentially in a regenerative stage, it has to meet these certain requirements. So a lot of times the vehicle's going down the road, got to be at a certain speed, but essentially what it's doing at that point is it just ramps up and dumps a tremendous amount of unburned fuel into this particulate filter, through the exhaust, but at the particulate filter, and it just gets this exhaust just burning hot.
It incinerates the particulate matter and gets rid of it. And during that process, you use a lot of extra fuel, you use a lot of extra DEF fluid.
Yes. So it's essentially, it's just cooking this, this particulate matter within the filter. And then from there, it goes to the diesel exhaust fluid, which again, now we're taking NOx emissions and we're turning it into nitrogen and essentially water.
Pretty much water.
Yeah. Which is crazy to me to think about. So essentially, when you think of the selective catalyst reductant system, it's a chemical reaction chamber.
Yep.
I mean, that's, for all intents purposes, that's the only thing that's going on back there.
Yep. The ammonia reacts with the oxides of nitrogen and breaks those molecules apart, basically. And yeah, like Josh said, you got nitrogen and water that comes out of the tailpipe as a result of that.
And so we'll go through because there's now a service, and this is something that BG just kicked off. BG just kicked off this year. And so through a lot of research, like here's some images. So this is the DOC. Oh yeah, I'm sorry, got the wrong one. So here's the DOC portion of it. And basically this is, if you think of a honeycomb, that's what that should look like. So essentially it's a screen. It's got the catalytic converter on a vehicle, but all the precious metals that are in there to help reduce the emissions of vehicles. And then the DFC, again, in this image here, like this is obviously one that is sooted over, but it should have this same honeycomb looking screen on it, but it's just plugged up essentially. And then you can see on the other one, on the SCR, so you can see all this piled down here in the corner for sure. Yep. And so now I'll flip over here to this next image. And so talk about the system. So BG service and what they're doing to help clean this out. They've got it's essentially a wash for the exhaust system of these diesel trucks, and they're going to put this chemical in. So you apply it running, and it goes in, and it's almost like a foam that goes in here, and you apply it to the vehicle running. There's several quarts that go into the vehicle, and then you shut it off.
Let it sit for a half hour or something.
Let it sit for a half hour, and then essentially it, rinses these screens, and then you'll start it back up, and then you run a rinse agent through this exhaust as well, which is absolutely crazy. So when you put this rinse agent in there, it almost looks like, you literally have bubbles coming out of the tailpipe of this thing.
You turned your Super Duty into a bubble
into a bubble machine. But this is before and after images of these components. So this is what it looked like before. This is after the service. And so we've actually got the opportunity to experience one of the very first trucks that were doing this. When the vehicle came to us, it was towed in on a wrecker, and the truck would not run for more than
10,
I was going to say, it definitely wasn't a minute long.
And it would just bog itself down and die.
Because the exhaust was so plugged here, like it could not pass anything through. And so it would kill the exhaust on the truck. And so through us loosening the exhaust a little bit and allowing it to let the truck run long enough to get the chemical into the exhaust.
Yes. So that, I just want to hit on that real quick. That was the craziest thing I've ever seen. Like when we loosened the nut on the exhaust flange, right behind the engine, so in front of all the filters, we loosened the nut on that flange, and the truck had been shut off for a minute, and loosened that flange nut, and that exhaust goes out through that flange. I was like, holy crap. You're talking 100% plugged up exhaust. It was wild.
And so we were able to get the chemical in through the truck, and it was unbelievable. The truck
never
ran
would have
afterwards.
believed it had I not said. Not only did that truck run, but we went from a 100% restricted, set up a scan tool session when it was all said and done, and ran the DPF monitor on there, and we were 0% restricted.
Yeah.
So didn't just help, but took it to 0% restriction, which everybody out there in the diesel world, whether you're hot shot trucking or running big semis or whatever, everybody's heard the horror stories or maybe lived through them of a plugged DPF filter and how expensive that is.
Well, and that's one of the comments down here is that, okay, yeah, it does this, and then it goes into limp mode, as Dylan pointed out there down here at the bottom. And yeah, that is definitely something that, we experience. And I think the manufacturers on these diesels have done obviously a little bit better over time, but years ago, you'd all the time get customers in, their truck would go into a regen mode,
Mm-hmm.
And it was letting and continue to drive the vehicle, because the regen cycles, you had to drive them for so many miles or so
Right.
over so long of a distance. And I think they have gotten a lot better, maybe shorter durations of regens, and they can do it within tighter tolerances as opposed to years ago. I mean, you could go drive a truck 20 miles and still have not completed a complete regen cycle, And so, again, as advancements in technologies and processes and materials and stuff like that, it's gotten better and better for sure, but it's still something that it doesn't matter whether it's a new truck or one with 100,000 miles on it. Like, this is just because of quality of fuels and things like that. Like, this is something that every vehicle has.
Yep.
For sure. And so, talked a lot about all the different fuel systems and ways to keep that vehicle clean. But I still circle back around to, for you as a consumer, I mean, you go to an O'Reilly's or an AutoZone or Walmart even, and you look at any type of just go to the automotive aisle, right? And all the different options that are out there for a consumer to potentially put in their vehicle. And there's so much, it's overwhelming.
Yeah.
How does a consumer know what to do?
Yeah.
And so that's when I go back to that multi-point inspection and having an expert look over that vehicle, identify what the needs are based on how you drive the vehicle. I think is huge, and by far the single most important service for somebody. And to be able to do that on a routine basis, every 5 months, 5,000 miles of what you get for that, that's where I value, I guess, our works package so high, is because it is part of that multi-point inspection.
Mm-hmm.
And to have somebody look over that vehicle that often, I think, is highly important for sure, especially just as consumers these days. Years ago, you'd stop and get fuel and check the oil and tire
Mm-hmm.
pressure and all that stuff. And today, nope, you're putting gas in it and go inside, get you a pop, get back in it, go down the road, and never even think twice about, what's under the hood and what's going on. So we had a vehicle the other day we looked at, and it had been 4,000 miles since service and came in for something else. And I mean, we checked the oil on it, and it was 3.5 quarts low on oil. Like the vehicle had consumed that much oil within 4,000 miles.
Yep.
And that even at that rate, nobody even knew it other than we checked it, right? And I wonder how much consumers, how many vehicles out there that are not on a full oil level right now.
Yep.
And nobody's even aware of it.
Yep.
So yeah, definitely value that multi-point inspection. So, hey, Kelly, I appreciate you coming in and hanging out with me. It's always always a good time for sure, and filling in there for and then for you listeners, thanks for the calls, thanks for the comments, and we'll catch you next weekend. Everybody have a safe weekend, and we'll talk to you next Saturday.